I guess new starter time. This little ear right here broke off. That doesn't sound good. I guess it's gonna need like a new engine. So stay tuned for a new engine in the C10. Welcome to 2 months later. Since the last time I picked up a new engine for this thing, but as you can see, we're getting started a little bit late on a Friday night, so I'm gonna get this thing pulled into the shop. Oh, great. More problems, huh? Okay, so it sounds terrible, but the damage has already been done, so I'm gonna drive it over there anyway. Oh, this thing sounds terrible. Come on, baby, just a few more feet here. Okay, I made it in the shop. Ta-da! All right, so I picked this motor up off Marketplace for $1,000. Hopefully it doesn't have the same issues that one ended up having, but supposedly it's only got 111,000 miles on it, which is pretty doggone low, especially for one of these early 5.3s. Most of them are up over like 200,000 miles or more at this point. So I felt it was worth taking the risk on. And other than that, it's basically swap for swap. Should be all the same exact sensors, same heads, everything's all the same. So it should be a pretty quick and easy swap, and it really needs to be, because right now it's Friday night at about 8 o'clock, and I'm borrowing the company shop to do this work in, and I need to be out of here by Monday so they can get back to work in here. So we're kind of under the gun. But as the great Burt Monroe once said, if you don't follow through on your dreams, then you might as well be a vegetable. And I subscribe to that idea, just like you should subscribe to the show. So, with all that in mind, I'm gonna quit talking and get to work. The worst part of this is starting with the very first thing, because then it's like the point of no return, and then you have to go through it doing everything else, and you're like, man, where exactly do I start? And you just gotta roll your sleeves up and get in there and do it, which means we need tools. Oh, there we go, got it. Engine swaps with a forklift is awesome. Okay. All right, time to get serious here. One radiator. Interesting. I didn't know I used any metric hose clamps on this thing. That's not like me. Using metric stuff. Well, except for an entire LS engine. Should probably disconnect the battery. Not exactly supposed to be like the middle step. It's normally the first one, but yeah, it's fine. If you wanted to see things done in order, you'd, you know, watch the professionals. Oh, you know what, I just realized that doesn't have a harness with it. So, I'm actually gonna leave this connected over here, but unconnect it from the engine, which means this has to come off, which is unfortunate because that screw is stuck in there. Pick up on it. There we go. Oh. Apparently it just kind of pushed through it. Okay, well that's fine. And of course my socket went down into here. Okay. So this is like the really boring part of pulling the wiring harness off, so we're just going to skip through it for you. Time lapse, begin. Okay, so the whole motor's stripped. Got the harness off, fuel lines, throttle cable, all the coolant lines and everything. It's like 11 o'clock tonight, so I think we're gonna call it a night, and then tomorrow we'll get started on just zipping this thing out. There's a few LS swap parts that I have to use from this engine onto that one, so we'll get those swapped over while they're next to each other and then swap the new one in. So that's it for the night. Okay, so we're back, and last night we got the harness stripped off, we got all the hoses pulled off and everything. Still got to go down underneath and pull the starter off and just get some of the harness wires underneath the engine pulled out of some of their clips and stuff. And then I got to unbolt the flex plate, unbolt the transmission, and unbolt the motor mounts, and then we can yard this thing out and swap motors. So I'm going to go ahead and go down underneath and get started. The threads are stripped out on that. That's freaking fantastic. I got one of the exhaust pipes off, but it's got a clamp on there that's gonna catch on the frame when I pull the motor out. Well, the motor might be able to come out with that on, so I'm just gonna leave that and see what happens. And head over and get the exhaust on the other side. This is always the worst part, is getting the freaking exhaust to come off, unless you cut it. But I don't think it needs to be cut. There we go. So next is what I would consider to be probably one of the most important steps, which is getting the flex plate bolts off. You can leave them on there and pull the motor out with the torque converter still attached to the flex plate, but then it'll pull the torque converter out of the transmission. And then normally you've got to replace the front seal on the transmission if you do that. So it just ends up normally making a bunch more work. So I like to pull the flex plate bolts off the torque converter, and then the flex plate and engine come out without the torque converter. Okay, so I think everything down underneath is off. Now I just got to get the bell housing bolts and motor mount bolts, and then this thing can get yarded out. So when I went and picked up this motor, I actually left my box of tools behind at the guy's house that I got it from, and he actually called me up and told me that I left my tools there so I could come back and get them. So it seems like the guy was a straight shooter and hopefully pretty trustworthy, because I'm kind of taking him on good faith here that that motor's good. Okay, motor mount bolts are out. Even though I do it all the time, you're not supposed to start a bolt with an impact gun because it's real easy to strip the threads out. And since we're going into an aluminum head, I guess I'll do it the safe way this time. Whoop. A little more stability. Need my golf shoes. Seems like it's still a little bit tight, but I'm pretty sure I got all the bolts. Well, as it turns out, I'm just missing bolts left and right, because there's at least one over here, probably another one over on the other side. The exhaust was kind of covering it up. It was hard to see. I had this all set up so the last bolt would be on top, so I wouldn't be under there while I pulled it out. So why don't I go ahead and just put a bolt on top real quick in case something weird happens when I'm pulling them out from underneath. I don't think anything weird will happen because the transmission actually has two cross members under it, one up front and one behind. But, you know, you never know. Just in case. There, that seems more like it let go. Oh yeah, we're totally clear. So we're just, all these wires are caught up on these hoses, and LS motor's got a lot of wires on them. Well, I'm just gonna go up with it, and hopefully I don't break a bunch of stuff. I gotta pull the brake booster off real quick before I pull this out. I forgot I had to pull that off to get the motor in. All right, that was kind of a pain in the ass. but it's out. When you do an LS swap on a 72 Chevy pickup, if you're gonna use the factory manifold on the LS motor, you have to modify the frame over on the passenger side a little bit for the exhaust manifold to clear. What you're supposed to do is heat that up and bend the frame down a little bit. And I messed up and I started doing that on the bottom part of the frame channel, and it turned out it was actually the top part of the frame channel that I needed to do. And at that point I was just kind of fed up with the whole thing, so I actually cut a notch in it, which probably isn't the best thing for strength of the frame, but this frame's pretty beefy. I mean, it's about that wide on the bottom. It's like that tall. There's also a cross member right there tying the two frame rails together. And there's still quite a bit of meat on the top even right there. So I don't think it's gonna be a problem, especially since we're only pushing the torque out of a 5.3. I think it's probably fine. But it's really close to the manifold to the point that it actually, when the motor's running, it'll actually kind of vibrate on the frame there a little bit. And I never really cleaned it up, so I'm just gonna clean the notch up a little bit with a grinder. And if this engine has any different tolerance to it, maybe it's a little bit wider where those manifolds are or something, maybe it won't even fit. So I'm gonna grind just a little bit more out and hopefully it's fine. I know that you all will frown on this heavily for having cut that notch there, but it's not, Rod. I think it's plenty beefy enough even with that notch, so I'm leaving it. I don't have enough time to patch it and all that kind of stuff anyway, and I don't think it's ever gonna cause a problem. Okay, so when you do an LS swap, there's a few little things that you have to do, which we're gonna have to swap from this engine over to the other one. The first one is if you want your oil pressure gauge to work inside of an old vehicle, you have to get this adapter so that you can adapt it to the oil pressure line that goes into your dash. So pull that out, put it on that engine. The other thing is the old temperature sensors use this big old 1/2-inch pipe thread thing, but the heads on an LS are like this little teeny tiny metric deal, so you have to get like a couple of different adapters. I mean, there's probably one they make that'll do the whole thing in one step. But this is what I set up to make it work so I could adapt to the old style temperature sender. And then there's also, on the older LS engines, there's some emission stuff. They've got this EGR valve up here. This gets pulled off. And then we got a cap off where the EGR comes out from the exhaust manifold, which you can see I've done on this one. There's just a cap right here. And then that comes up to this hose, which goes up to the intake manifold. And then you get a little cap that goes on that as well, which I've got right here. So that stuff all needs to get swapped onto this engine. The later LS engines are actually so efficient that I think after about 2003, they actually were able to get rid of the EGR valve. And then there was also some stuff that was missing on this engine. This whole bank of injectors was pulled. Somebody pulled those for something. Hopefully that doesn't mean there's any problems with it. But I'll pull some injectors out of that and put in this. The evap purge solenoid right here needs to be pulled from this over to this manifold just to plug this off so I don't have a vacuum leak. I've got the computer program to just delete the evap purge, but I still put it in and plug it in just so the computer doesn't throw any codes or anything. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and start swapping parts. Eat the shit off of here. This is what we do with emissions junk. Dude, I seen the head of this twisting without the other side twisting at all, and somehow it made it out. Okay. And luckily, the gasket came off completely intact. And since apparently these are lucky screws, I'm gonna use these ones. Oh, no. So much for being my lucky bolt. Ah, that just adds way more freaking time than I want to spend on this. Well, hopefully I can get that out. I'm able to move it with these, luckily. So, may have to chase those threads with a tap, but they're metric. I really doubt there's a metric tap here. May have to go get one. But luckily I was able to get the bolt to come out, at least. It's kind of a neat trick if you don't have enough room for anything other than a socket, but you don't have a socket. Stick this guy on like that, and then stick a wrench on it, spin it like that, and it works. Okay. So this is gonna be for the oil pressure gauge. I'm a little concerned that the cam sensor is able to spin like that. Hopefully it's not broken or something. Hopefully that's fine. And then I'll get the temperature sender swapped. And this goes in place of this plug right here in the head. So now I think I'm gonna do the exhaust adapters, which have the oxygen sensors in them. Hopefully those come off without breaking bolts and stuff. Kind of dumb they put the oxygen sensor right in the way, right there. I may just have to pull it out real quick. No, if that went or if it just rounded. I think it just rounded, yeah. Man, the O2 sensor just does not want to come out. Ugh. Crap. Let's see, I just need to get, I think, the 12-point part of this around there. It's very close to fitting. I may just need to grind that stud down just a little bit to get that in. Worried I'm wrecking the oxygen sensor in the process. Crap. Which I really don't want to do. There we go. But I got just enough to get that in there. Okay, hopefully it'll actually come off there now. Oh, jeez, dude. Oh, there we go. Got it to break loose. Oh, wait a second. Oh, dude. Are you kidding me? I guess I should have tried swapping those first. I guess I'm actually gonna have to swap the manifolds because this uses this tapered flange here on these exhaust manifolds, and I think that that's actually a part of the manifold, and even if it's not, it would probably be a huge pain to try to get that out, which means I didn't even have to spend all this time trying to do all that crap because it just uses a different, totally different style. So great. That's freaking fantastic. I don't believe it. But I will anti-seize all this stuff when I put it back together. There are a couple of broken manifold bolts in these heads, so at some point I'm probably gonna have to go through and fix that, but that is something I definitely don't have time for this weekend because we are late on Saturday already. So it gives me one more day to get the engine in and try to get it running. This whole thing is almost comical. It's just the way everything's been going though. Like, who would have thought? Oh, the exact same engine from the exact same truck has a different style flange. And then I swapped over the block-off plate before realizing that I needed to swap the manifolds. If I'd have known before I needed to swap the manifolds, I could have just left the block-off plate on these and not even had to deal with that. Not had to run and get a tab. So the other thing that we need to do on an LS swap is pull these adapter plates off that adapt the engine to a regular old-style small block motor mount. Oh. That's fantastic. Great. Should have probably bought new motor mount plates. I didn't think they were going to be this big of a pain to get off of here. I don't know if tapping on this helped at all, but Maybe. No, that's twisting. Crap, dude. Shit. I don't have any more Allens that even fit that. I think what I'm gonna do is finish with the other stuff, get the air conditioning pulled off of that one, and then probably call it a night. And then hopefully tomorrow I can get these adapter plates off. If not, I don't know any place locally to get them, so we might just be host for the weekend. But man, this has turned into a huge fiasco. I feel like if this was just like a small block Chevy for small block Chevy swap, it probably would have been done by now. Kind of making me regret I had done the LS swap thing. Just don't do it. Like everything else we do. You're on Knot Rod. I got so many tools scattered all over the ground, I'm starting to get confused at what I'm looking at. Okay, we actually have a manifold done that will adapt to the exhaust that's in the truck. And the cool thing about one of these LS motors is the air conditioning pump is on its own separate belt. So you don't have to get a new shorter belt or anything to run the rest of the accessories. You just pull the AC pump off, cut the belt, and you're good to go. And these fuel lines are really nice to put on. They're not so great to take off. There it goes. You got 4 little tabs in here, and you have to bend every single one of them over to get this off. But the problem is if you move it just wrong, then one of the ones you already did pops back down into place and then it doesn't come off. There's probably a better way to do that. I mean, they probably make a little tool that goes on there or something, but I don't know. This is how I do it. Real quick, I think I'm gonna vacuum it. Okay, so now I just got to swap the injectors from the right bank out of that motor into this one. Okay, well, I don't have the tool. I broke my only Allen wrench for getting the adapter plates off for the motor mounts. And it's 9 o'clock, so all the auto parts stores are closed, so I can't get what I need. Everything's basically swapped over except for those, so I think we're going to call it a night and then come back tomorrow and hopefully I can get those plates off. I can get those plates off and on this, then we've got Sunday tomorrow to hopefully finish this whole thing. We'll see. Hoping to meet my self-imposed deadline, but might not happen.